My academic practice for this integrated content unit is explore and expand, and I teach visual art. So students explore new ideas and materials and techniques in class. They expand their knowledge of the art elements, which they've been learning from the beginning of the school year. Those art elements are line, shape, form, color, value, texture, and space. They're also expanding their knowledge of art history, science, and technology. All those curriculum areas are going to be integrated into this unit. They're making connections between the art they make in class and using those art elements. And exploring and expanding is making the art relevant to them because, it is an experiential thing. Good experiences make them want to continue making art, and art helps them in other subjects by teaching observation, creative thinking, problem solving, and persistence. So my first lesson plan is the Paleolithic art lesson. Once again, the academic practice is explore and expand. My rationale for this lesson is that it introduces the earliest art known to be made by humans. I wanted to introduce students to art history, and I figured I'd start at the beginning. So we started with Paleolithic art. The section that we studied, the cave art that we studied, was roughly 35,000 years old, and so it was at the time the oldest art that had ever been discovered. This lesson integrates the elements of art and history and science, and I wanted to make art history interesting, so I tried to make it experiential. This lesson gives students connection. Makes it relevant to them because if they have any Spanish or European ancestry, then it's possible that this cave art could have been made by a very, very, very distant relative. This lesson lets them experience what it might have been like to discover cave art, and it helps them see the timelessness of art creation and look at some of the archetypical symbols, symbols that are as old as art. And it extends creative career thinking to archaeology, anthropology, and film. So here we see, the first thing I did was I showed him The Cave of Forgotten Dreams, which is a documentary film, Oscar winning actually, and it is in a cave called Chauvet Cave in France, which is in southern France. Here you can see a couple of images from the cave walls. On the left is the lion, what they call the lion panel, which is a series of line art drawings of lions. And then on the right there you can see the two what they call woolly rhinoceros doing battle with each other. The thing that's really interesting about this particular cave and these drawings is that, number one, the age. At the time it was discovered, it was the oldest known art ever made. And since the kids have been exploring the elements of art, we did do contour line drawings, and it's really interesting that most of these drawings are contour line drawings, so they get to see the possibilities. The other thing that's kind of cool about this movie is it kind of dispels the myth that Paleolithic people were real primitive, your typical Flintstone, with carrying a club and dragging women up by the hair, and real crude and rude. These drawings are obviously quite sophisticated, so that would lead one to hypothesize that the people who made them were actually quite sophisticated and very much in tune with the animals that they were drawing. So that's kind of a neat thing for the kids to learn. So after watching the parts of the documentary, we didn't watch the whole thing, but we watched parts of it. Their assignment was to bring in a natural material, a stone, and I wanted them to experience what it might be like to draw on stone. So we did what I called a rock art or a totem animal. I gave them some examples of symbols for reference. I drew those on the board. Symbols that were in the cave, in the movie that we watched. And then on the right you can see some examples of some of the students' work translating those symbols into onto their rock. This is a video tour of my classroom set up as a cave for our Paleolithic art unit, art history unit. So the kids did a mural for the wall, and they also decorated rocks, spirit rocks, as artifacts. And so you can see that as we walk along here, we're looking at lots of cave drawings. And it's pretty cool. I'll stop here and you can see around the room how we've had the walls set up with the murals. So the last part of the first unit, the Paleolithic art unit, after they did their rock art and they did the murals and did the cave tour, they got to watch Disney's Brother Bear movie. This movie is actually pretty accurate as far as the history and the art goes. It's pretty obvious that the Disney artists did their homework and research. So what I wanted to do was kind of I wanted to give them a modern day artist take on Paleolithic art. And you can see from the slide that there are some representations, quite a few similar representations in the movie of the art that we actually saw filmed in Lascaux Cave and in other caves in France. And so the kids were to watch the movie and kind of raise their hand or give a thumbs up when they saw something that they recognized from the documentary film Cave of Forgotten Dreams. So that was pretty cool. The kids, it was sort of like a seek and find. So that was fun, and the kids enjoyed it. And plus, you know, hey, who doesn't like a Disney movie? So the second lesson plan in this unit is called Doodle for Google. Once again, the academic practices explore and expand. My rationale for this lesson plan was to let students experience the creative process that the pros use, professional artists. Doodle for Google is a scholarship competition that Google holds where kids from K through 12 get to design their own Google Doodle. It's a national competition. The student can win a $30,000 scholarship, and they get a bunch of technology that goes along with that. And the cool thing is that the school of the winning student also gets a $50,000 technology grant. So it's kind of a neat competition, and it's open to any kid K through 12. The students get to experience all the steps that professionals use to create art, and those are basically 4 steps. Imagine, create, collaborate, and share. That is a process that is pretty much industry standard for any professional that's going to be working at the corporate level to create art. This lesson integrates elements of art again, and language arts. There's a written portion where they have to write a title in 10 words or less, and they have to write a description of their artwork that goes along with the theme for the year's competition in 50 words or less. So that's they have to rough draft, edit, rewrite, edit, finish, that kind of thing. So there's steps to that. And then technology, I incorporated technology. They went to the computer lab at our school and they searched for reference images to use in their artwork. My expectations were pretty high for them. I showed them some of the winning doodles from previous years, and so they were hopefully motivated to do their own original best work for this particular lesson. So like I said before, the creative process that the professionals use is that 4-step process: imagine, create, collaborate, and share. So the first part of the lesson, the kids used their imaginations and they did a brainstorming process. I broke them into small groups, and each group had to come up with a list of ideas to go along with the topic of the doodle. And then the next, hopefully the brainstorming process will spur them into, branching out into more and more creative ideas. So then they would take those ideas and they would do some sketches. They're trying to work out composition, incorporation of the Google letters, Google. So they did sketches. Then they have to transfer those sketches to their finished surface, which would hopefully be a better quality paper than the sketch paper or watercolor paper or whatever they're going to use. They get to use their choice of media, drawing media, painting media. They could even do 3-dimensional. According to the contest, the media is open, so they can use anything they want. They could even do sculpture if they wanted to. The third step, collaborate. They would be informally talking to their peers and getting constructive criticism on their artwork, whether or not it was communicating their theme or their ideas. So then they could go back and revise and redraw and collaborate with the peers to help them, and myself, to help them improve their work to its fullest potential. And at that point, that was when we used the technology to look up reference images. They were instructed not to copy directly any images and not to use any copyrighted images in their work, and that was a little bit of a hurdle for some of them, because they think if they draw an emoji in there to communicate happiness or love, that's okay. But what they don't realize is that that's someone else's work, and so they had some challenges at that section. The sharing part was kind of 2 phases. They could enter their work in the scholarship competition, which would mean that I have to photograph the work, attach an official entry form, and upload that to Google. Or if they chose not to enter the competition, they had to display their finished piece in our art hallway gallery show. So, either way they would have to complete the assignment, but it was optional for them to enter that competition. The language arts section was incorporated, as I said earlier, in writing a title, 10 words or less, and then describing their work in 50 words or less. And believe it or not, that was a challenge too. Some of the kids had way more than 50 words. 50 words is not a lot, so the kids were at first intimidated by those numbers and then limited by them. So that was interesting to see them, really put that effort into writing and editing so that they would fall under the guidelines that the competition required for the length of the writing. So it's a fun project. So last but not least, you can see a few examples of student work. Upper left is a fairly straightforward. A lot of the kids struggled with creative ideas for the letters. They got stuck on the letters. So I'm not sure. I need to maybe revise this assignment for the next time I do it. The letters don't necessarily have to even, they can be implied. They don't have to be literally drawn in there. So you can see two examples on the left where it was pretty straightforward. One kid just did images for the letters, and they were very obviously the letters. And then the one below that, a little more liberty and some playing with the background. Use of the entire page was a little bit better on that one. And then the one on the right, unfortunately, those princesses are, I believe, from a coloring book or a cartoon. So this, although beautiful, this drawing would have been disqualified because those princesses are copyrighted images. But that one, she used a lot of creativity in not only the composition, but how she used the space and made it bigger than some of the other entries. And the Google logo is not the predominant part of that one. So it was actually, I felt like a pretty successful solution to the assignment. So the third lesson plan in the unit is Oaxacan folk art paper mache sculptures. The reason I'm doing this lesson plan is because we haven't done any 3D yet, and I wanted to give the kids a chance to get messy and do something. A lot of kids, just because you're creative doesn't mean, you're. Some people are 2D people, some people are 3D people. So I wanted to give the hands-on 3Ders a chance to have some fun. The connection is pretty obvious. It's Mexican folk art. It's fanciful, fun, colorful, usually animal related, which is always fun for the kids. They love to draw and make animals and figures like that. It's folk art, which is art of the people. There's no formal training required. It's self-taught, so the kids get to see that even artists who aren't formally trained can make beautiful creations. Oaxaca is located in southern Mexico. Some of the kids have actually been there, so it's kind of cool. This art was not considered fine art until the mid-70s. So that's kind of an interesting tidbit or fact. The whole families are involved in art production, and the techniques are passed down for generations, so that's kind of cool that kids can see that you can actually make a living producing art and have it as a business. And then it's also, like I said, a chance for the kids to work in 3 dimensions and get messy and have fun. Our kids are going to start short cycle testing, so it's a nice de-stressor for them to be able to come to art class and and get messy and use their hands instead of having to use their brains so much. So they enjoy this section. So last but not least, I just threw some images of folk art sculptures. You can see that how colorful and whimsical the sculptures are, and they're using pattern and some a little bit of texture, but mostly pattern. And the kids have been learning pattern is one of the elements of art, or line, color. So once again it integrates that the art elements and gives the kids a chance to use those elements in a different way. Form also is a three-dimensional element, so it integrates quite a few, and so again reinforces and scaffolds those elements of art that they've been working with since the beginning.